My name is Marissa Fletcher, and my life changed at my little brother's graduation party. He stepped onto the stage, beaming with pride, holding up the keys to the new Mercedes S-Class our parents had gifted him. "This is what it looks like to be worthy of the family legacy," he announced, his voice echoing through the room of 150 guests. Our mother laughed loudly, pointing at me from the front row. "That girl over there only cares about ocean trash. She'll never be worthy of anything like this." He joined in, turning directly to me with a smirk. "Parents gave me this luxury sedan, not you. You'll never deserve it." The room erupted in applause, people cheering as if it was the highlight of the night. Our aunt shook her head in disgust, but no one else seemed to care. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I kept my head high and walked out, the laughter fading behind me. As I reached the hallway, the family lawyer hurried after me, pressing a sealed envelope into my hand. It was signed by my grandpa, who had passed away 16 years ago. The first line inside would turn everything upside down. "If you've ever been publicly humiliated by your family like this video, and subscribe to my channel to see how my story of justice ends." The next morning, I hit the road early. The drive from Dallas to Boise stretched 12 hours across endless highways, giving me plenty of time to think. I gripped the steering wheel of my old pickup truck, the one I had bought with my first paycheck after college, and let the memories flood back. At 22, I had made a choice that changed everything. I told Dad I wanted to study environmental engineering, focusing on cleaning up ocean plastics, instead of joining Fletcher Marine Logistics. He exploded during dinner that night, slamming his fist on the table so hard the plates rattled. "You're throwing away your future for garbage in the sea," he shouted, his face turning red. Mom sat quietly, nodding along with whatever he said, her eyes avoiding mine. That was the last family meal I ever had in that house. Dad gave me an ultimatum: drop the hippie nonsense or get out. I packed a single bag and left before sunrise, vowing to prove him wrong on my own terms. Those early years were tough, scraping by on scholarships and part-time jobs at recycling centers. I graduated top of my class and landed a grant to start a small operation in Boise, far from the family drama in Seattle. Idaho felt like a fresh start: clean air, wide open spaces, and a community that cared about sustainability. I named the company Ocean Cycle Solutions, specializing in turning fishing nets and plastic debris pulled from the Pacific into reusable materials. We developed a process to break down microplastics without harmful chemicals, something no one else was doing at scale. Starting with just 3 employees in a rented warehouse, I poured every dime back into equipment and research. Bethany joined me 2 years in as my assistant, handling the paperwork so I could focus on the lab. She became more than staff. She was the one who kept me grounded during late nights testing prototypes. Word spread through environmental conferences, and soon grants from foundations rolled in. We expanded to a larger facility on the outskirts of town, employing 20 people and partnering with coastal cleanup crews from California to Alaska. Last year, we processed over 500 tons of ocean waste, turning it into products like durable shipping pallets for logistics companies. Ironically, the kind Dad's business used, but never sourced sustainably. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the modest house I had bought with profits from the company. I killed the engine, grabbed the envelope from the passenger seat, and headed inside. The place was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint scent of coffee from that morning. I dropped my keys on the counter, sank into the couch, and stared at the sealed paper in my hands. It felt heavier than it should, the handwriting on the front unmistakable even after all these years: Grandpa Hayes. He had passed away 16 years ago when I was just 16, from what everyone called a sudden illness that wasted him away in months. I remembered visiting him in the hospital, his frail hand squeezing mine as he whispered about his inventions. He was the dreamer in the family, always tinkering in his garage with ways to clean the oceans before it was trendy. With trembling fingers, I tore open the envelope. A single sheet of paper folded neatly along with a small key taped to the bottom. The letter began in his familiar scrawl. My dearest Marissa, if you're reading this, Harold has done his job. I didn't die of natural causes. Your father Richard made sure of that to steal what was mine. My heart pounded as I read on. Grandpa explained how he had developed a breakthrough technology for breaking down marine plastics at the molecular level, using enzymes from deep-sea bacteria. It was revolutionary, worth billions if scaled. He had shared the early prototypes with Dad, hoping to integrate it into the family business. But Richard saw it as a threat to his traditional logistics model, which relied on cheap disposable materials. To silence Grandpa and claim the invention, Richard tampered with his treatment during those final hospital stays. He paid off a doctor to adjust medications, accelerating the decline, while making it look like complications from age. Grandpa suspected but gathered proof in secret recordings, lab notes, even a patent application he filed under a shell company. He wrote that he set up a trust in my name hidden from the family with $120 million from early investors who believed in the tech. The key opened a safe deposit box in Tacoma, holding everything needed to expose the truth. Use this to build what I couldn't, he urged. Don't let them destroy you like they did me. Tears blurred the words, but anger burned hotter. Dad had not only stolen Grandpa's legacy, but used it to build Fletcher Marine Logistics into an empire, all while pretending to grieve at the funeral. And Mom, she must have known something yet. She stood by him, favoring Mason as the golden child. I folded the letter carefully, my mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about justice for the man who believed in me when no one else did. Bethany texted to check if I had made it home safe, but I set the phone aside. For the first time, the pieces fit. My exile, the constant put-downs, it all stemmed from fear of what I could become with Grandpa's real gift. I stood up, paced the living room, and grabbed my laptop to search for the bank address. Tomorrow, I would drive to Tacoma and see the evidence for myself. Whatever waited in that box would change the game, and I was ready to play. I dialed Harold immediately. He picked up swiftly, his voice carrying the weight of long-held secrets. The letter reached you, he stated. I confirmed, gripping the phone tighter. He began without preamble. Henry designed this contingency when his health turned. Harold detailed how Henry initiated Legacy Trust 15 years prior during a stable phase of treatment, routing modest royalties from preliminary enzyme licensing agreements with small-scale net manufacturers, testing degradable polymers into a Wyoming LLC, fortified with multiple nominee owners to evade detection. Richard, immersed in global shipping expansions, overlooked the outflows, convinced Henry's workbench ideas held no value. Yet Henry pursued patent protections through discreet intermediaries in Nevada, establishing a robust intellectual property shield. Conservative placements in diversified bonds and equities yielded an average 9% return, elevating the corpus to $120 million untouched by taxes or family claims. The instrument designates you sole heir, Harold affirmed. Irrevocable, independent of any will or probate. The conversation extended nearly an hour as Harold unpacked the Tacoma safe deposit box contents. It featured 3 primary sections plus a secure pouch. The initial section preserved Henry's leather-bound journals entries, spanning months, chronicling the discovery of hyper-efficient microbes in abyssal sediment cores, with precise cultivation protocols and 95% breakdown efficiency in saline environments under controlled acceleration. The adjacent section juxtaposed those authentics against Richard's submissions to the Patent Authority, lodged shortly after Henry's passing, featuring near-identical schematics, but intentionally weakened binding agents to obscure derivation. A neutral auditor's dossier prepared at Harold's direction identified 52 plagiarized segments, including proprietary incubation cycles, and exposed digital manipulation in submission dates. The secondary section compiled financial forensics spreadsheets logging $9 million rerouted from corporate innovation allocations to a Curaçao trust subsequently distributed as performance incentives to Richard's individual holdings, accompanied by omitted disclosure forms in annual filings. The pouch secured 40 micro-recorders Henry integrated into household items like clock radios and bookends. Harold sampled a file Richard on a secure line to a ward supervisor directing, "Interfere with Henry's regimen. Amplify delivery to precipitate collapse record as complication." The supervisor voiced ethical qualms, but Richard authorized a $100,000 transfer to a numbered account concluding the exchange. Separate recordings documented Richard instructing a storage clerk to discard rival batches, taped amid casual conversations about weekend plans. I inquired about the deliberate postponement. "Henry stayed informed through proxies," Harold replied. "He reviewed your quarterly updates contributed anonymously to Ocean Cycle's expansion grant via a donor-advised fund." Henry perceived Mason as Richard's protege in ambition without invention, engineering the envelope release to coincide with the ceremony for stark juxtaposition lavish endorsement of one child against the other's self-made achievements. Harold disclosed Henry barred Lillian from involvement after she repeatedly invalidated his suspicions in medical consultations. She assured staff it was medication-induced paranoia, Harold recounted. Lillian championed Richard's narrative of internal innovation, presenting the adapted technology at shareholder meetings as evidence of lineage brilliance. Her contempt for my endeavors escalated. During rare family video calls, she derided eco-recycling as feudal virtue signaling that dilutes profit margins, while lauding Mason's internship presentations on optimized routing algorithms. Lillian remains entirely unaware of the trust structure. Harold guaranteed. We coordinated execution. Harold verified the bank's dual signature mandate for Monday retrieval, with identity verification and surveillance protocols. Activation invites regulatory scrutiny. He cautioned outlining sequences, temporary holds on liquid assets, coordinated inquiries from trademark enforcement, potential shareholder derivative actions. I visualized Richard's orchestrated triumph unraveling on stage. "Advance," I directed. Harold undertook to transmit sanitized excerpts overnight for preliminary validation. The line disconnected, leaving silence filled with purpose. Henry equipped me to rectify historical theft. Harold messaged a current appraisal $120,491,000. The valuation provided foundation, yet the audio supplied leverage. Henry engineered exposure over endowment. I organized a dossier folder on my desktop cross-referencing attachments, then assembled overnight essentials for the journey. Bethany got a concise update on scheduling conflicts, comprehensive briefing reserved for confirmed materials. Anticipation displaced exhaustion as the clock ticked toward departure. The alarm buzzed at 4. I dressed fast, grabbed a travel mug of coffee, and drove straight to Tacoma under dark skies. Harold stood by the bank entrance when I pulled up at 7:25, briefcase in grip. The vault manager scanned our IDs, then escorted us down the elevator to the secure area. Harold turned his key, I turned mine. The metal box felt solid as we placed it on the table in the viewing room and flipped the latch. 3 folders waited inside, plus a sealed drive and neat bundles of bonds. The top folder opened to Henry's handwritten notebooks, margins packed with enzyme formulas and test logs from coastal water trials 16 years old. Beside them sat Richard's patent filings dated post-funeral with matching graphs but tweaked variables to hide origins. A third-party analysis flagged 41 direct lifts, including bacterial sequences Henry isolated from trench samples. The middle folder showed transfer records from company accounts to a Panama entity looping back to Richard's private holdings, $9 million in royalties for the repurposed process. The bottom folder held notarized depositions from a former oncology nurse and Henry's old technician. The nurse described Richard requesting solo access during midnight shifts, leaving with discarded ampules. The technician quoted Richard pressuring a supplier to substitute compounds, promising it would speed the inevitable. The drive contained the real fire. Harold connected it to a secure terminal, and we played the lead track, Richard on speaker, calm as ever, directing a physician. Adjust the dosage on Henry's infusion rampant to trigger cascade failure. Blame the cancer. The doctor pushed back, once then accepted a deposit confirmation. 30 additional clips captured parallel instructions, some from Henry's bedside phone during family visits, where Richard dismissed symptoms as overdramatized. Harold stopped after clip 8. "This crosses wire fraud, IP theft, and homicide lines," he stated. "I duplicated the drive to cloud storage, then examined the bonds enough for initial counsel retainers. We sealed everything, initialed the log, and exited to the lobby." Harold passed a business card. "Laura Reed, FBI White Collar Unit. She owes me from a prior case." I called from my truck. Laura answered briskly. "Harold flagged urgency," she said after my name. I outlined the package: original inventions versus forged submissions, audio directives for lethal dosing, money trails through blind trusts. "Upload encrypted," she directed. "Case opens this morning." She mapped the sequence: account restraints by close of business, medical record pulls tomorrow, witness outreach under protection. "Friday's contract ceremony at McCaw Hall," she verified. "Ideal intercept point." Laura detailed execution. Plainclothes teams would mingle with guests, warrants served mid-announcement. "Richard will deny authenticity," she anticipated. Chain of custody and spectral analysis shut that down. Mason's exposure came if proceeds touched him, separate IRS referral for undeclared gains. We scheduled a video brief at 2, and she required raw metadata by noon. Harold left for document certification. I merged onto the interstate toward Boise, timeline locked. The plan crystallized during the return trip. Richard's deal closed: a $500 million partnership, his legacy capstone. Crashing it live ensured maximum fallout: press frenzy, partner withdrawals, market collapse. Laura confirmed coordination with Seattle Bureau for seamless takedown. I messaged Bethany about extended absence, citing legal matters, then reviewed upload protocols. Proof locked, strategy set. 4 days until exposure. Friday arrived. I entered McCaw Hall through the press entrance badge clipped from Laura Reed's team. The auditorium buzzed with 500 executives, investors in tailored suits, and camera crews positioned for the live stream. A massive screen behind the stage displayed the partnership logo for the $500 million Pacific Shipping Alliance. Richard stood at the podium in a navy suit, gesturing confidently as he outlined sustainability milestones built on proprietary degradation tech. Mason sat front row beside Lillian, both beaming under chandeliers. Laura had embedded 8 agents among guests, earpieces, hidden warrants sealed in briefcases. I took a seat near the aisle tablet, ready with the compiled evidence package. Richard wrapped his speech, inviting the Asian Consortium CEO on stage for the ceremonial signing. Pens hovered over contracts when I stood. "Excuse the interruption," I announced, voice amplified through the hall's system. Reed's tech override. Gasps rippled as the main screen shifted from logos to a document scan: Henry's original patent draft dated 16 years prior. Richard's smile faltered. "Security," he barked. Agents rose calmly, badges flashing. I continued. "This is Henry's authentic work." The next slide showed Richard's filing with highlighted alterations. The room stirred. Lillian half rose, clutching her pearls. "Who authorized this?" Richard demanded, face reddening. I triggered the audio cue. Henry's lab ambiance filled speakers first, then Richard's voice, clear. "Interfere with Henry's regimen, escalate dosage to force organ shutdown, attribute to natural decline." The CEO froze mid-signature. Another clip played Richard directing a pharmacist on payoff logistics. Chaos erupted. Agents converged on stage. Richard, you're under arrest for fraud, theft of intellectual property, and conspiracy to commit murder. The lead declared, cuffs clicking. Richard struggled briefly. This is fabricated, he shouted. Lillian lunged forward. Let him go. She's lying, always jealous. Her voice cracked as agents blocked her. Mason bolted upright, eyes wide, phone slipping from his hand. Dad? He stammered, backing into seats. Evelyn, seated 3 rows behind, began slow clapping, a grin spreading. About time, she muttered loud enough for nearby mics. I advanced slides, bank trails totaling 9 million, nurse affidavit excerpts, metadata verification stamps. Investors murmured, some filming on phones. The consortium CEO stepped away from the table, contract unsigned. Deal suspended pending review, he stated into a reporter's microphone. Richard was escorted down steps, tie askew. Lillian followed, agents screaming, You ruined everything, you ungrateful girl. Mason trailed, pale, whispering denials to a board member who ignored him. Laura approached me amid the frenzy. Warrants executed, accounts frozen. Flashbulbs popped relentlessly. I addressed the crowd. Henry's legacy was stolen. Today, it's reclaimed. Evelyn joined me on stage, hugging briefly. He'd be proud, she said. Richard glanced back, once eyes meeting mine, defeat evident. Agents led him out a side door as sirens wailed outside. The hall emptied rapidly, partners huddling in corners, staff dismantling banners. Lillian collapsed into a chair, sobbing accusations. Mason paced, dialing lawyers frantically. I powered down the tablet, mission complete. Justice served publicly. 3 months passed. I flew into Boston for the sentencing at the federal courthouse, a gray stone building swarming with reporters. The trial had lasted 6 weeks. Jury deliberating only 4 hours. Richard sat in the defendant box, orange jumpsuit replacing his suit's expression hollow. Prosecutors presented the full chain, patent originals versus forgeries, wire transfers masked as bonuses, and 35 authenticated recordings of his instructions to medical staff. Defense claimed deepfake manipulation, but expert testimony on voice biometrics and device metadata dismantled that. Witnesses, including the former nurse granted immunity, testified to syringe swaps and altered charts. The judge, a stern woman with wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed victim impact statements. Mine detailed the erased childhood bond, the years building ocean cycle under constant dismissal. Richard not only stole innovation, but accelerated a father's death for profit. I read. Lillian refused to attend, sending a letter read by counsel blaming external sabotage. Mason appeared daily, fidgeting in the gallery, avoiding eye contact. The company filed Chapter 7 the week after arrest. Assets liquidated to cover creditor claims, stock worthless. Employees scattered, some suing for severance. Sentencing day drew a packed room. The judge cited aggravating factors: premeditation spanning months, abuse of family trust, economic harm to shareholders. 18 years imprisonment, she declared, gavel striking. Richard stood motionless as marshals cuffed him for transfer to medium security facility. No appeal bond, flight risk cited from offshore accounts now seized. Media swarmed outside, headlines flashing, Marine mogul jailed for murder plot. Lillian's downfall unfolded parallel. Trust assets reverted to legacy fund under my control. Her joint holdings frozen pending forfeiture. She sold the Dallas mansion at auction, downsizing to a modest apartment in a suburb she once scorned. Paparazzi caught her at grocery outlets, cart sparse. A certified letter arrived at my Boise office, her handwriting shaky. You orchestrated this nightmare out of spite, it accused. Richard built everything, you destroyed it for revenge. She ignored evidence, clinging to narratives of my betrayal since college choice. I filed it with legal records, no response sent. Mason's troubles escalated separately. IRS audits triggered by frozen transfers uncovered unreported income from shell entities, kickbacks funneled through his consulting gig. He omitted $2 million in gifts over 3 years, claiming ignorance. Agents raided his Seattle condo at dawn, seizing laptops and luxury watches. Indictment followed tax evasion, money laundering. Bail set at $500,000. He posted using Lillian's remortgaged jewelry. Court appearance showed him disheveled lawyer pleading for probation. Judge remanded him pending trial, citing obstruction after deleted files recovered. I watched coverage from the courthouse steps. Reporters asked about reconciliation. Actions have consequences, I replied. Evelyn called, later chuckling. Karma's thorough. Ocean Cycle secured new contracts from the vacuum partners seeking ethical alternatives. The $120 million trust-seeded expansion labs hiring displaced engineers. Richard's empire reduced to footnotes in business journals. Lillian sent another missive weeks later, postmarked from a budget motel. Your grandfather would hate what you've become, it ranted. I archived it digitally. Mason's plea deal loomed likely 5 years if cooperative. The family fracture once hidden, now public record. Closure felt final. Another year went by. The Henry Innovation Center opened on the Boise riverfront, a sleek glass structure housing 3 labs and a public exhibit on ocean plastics. Legacy Trust funded every brick, $80 million allocated for construction equipment and endowed fellowships. I cut the ribbon beside Bethany, now chief scientist, while local kids toured interactive displays showing enzyme breakdown in real time. Media called it redemption architecture. I saw it as Henry's blueprint realized. Daily operations consumed me. We recruited 20 researchers, published 2 papers on scaled microbial reactors, and partnered with Pacific Fleets for at-sea trials. Revenue from licensing covered salaries. Trust principle remained intact for future phases. Evelyn visited monthly, donating her time to mentor interns. Henry smiles somewhere, she said during one walkthrough. A plain envelope arrived mid-morning, no return address, postmarked from a Nevada town. Lillian's script more erratic than before. I slid it open in the mailroom. Pages rambled accusations of theft claims I poisoned, Richard's defense demands for restitution from the center's profits. You were never family. One line spat. I read once, folded the sheets, and tore them methodically into confetti over the recycle bin. No reply, no forwarding to counsel. The act felt ceremonial, final. Mason's updates reached me indirectly through court filings. His plea netted 30 months for evasion. Early release possible with good behavior. Lillian moved to a senior facility in Arizona, Medicaid covering basics after assets exhausted. No contact since the letter. I blocked remaining numbers, deleted old photos, archived emails. The cut was clean, deliberate. Staff noticed my lighter schedule. I mentored evenings, hiked weekends, built routines unshadowed by obligation. Bethany hosted team barbecues. Evelyn brought homemade pies. Chosen family filled the space blood once occupied. One quiet afternoon, I stood on the center's balcony overlooking the river. A plaque read, "Dedicated to Truth in Innovation, Henry." Wind carried gulls overhead. I reflected on the journey from sidelined daughter to guardian of legacy. Family isn't inherited. It's selected through actions, loyalty, respect. Richard taught betrayal, Lillian denial, Mason entitlement. I chose differently. The center thrived, enrollment doubling for summer programs. Grants flowed without strings. Henry's vision scaled globally, cleaning coasts one polymer at a time. I closed the balcony door, returned to meetings. Past severed, future built.